So you've moved to the United Kingdom and you've probably been here about 15, maybe 20 years. At some point, you've probably asked yourself, should I move back home? Well, this is the video where we're going to be talking about retirement. We're going to explore whether it's practical, whether the pension is going to be enough if you decide to live or retire in the United Kingdom, and also, of course, healthcare. Which is better during your retirement? So let's cover those things. So the first thing I want to tackle is the reason why you probably may want to retire is in Zimbabwe or in Africa is because, as you know, for those of you that have been here for about 20 years, back in the day, things were quite, affordable in terms of groceries, even things like fuel. Everything has gone up really high in the past 20 years, which means that inflation in England is a real thing. So the question now is, if you add perhaps 20 years from now, how are things going to be? Is your retirement money going to be enough to take care of you, or is it going to be much better, or it's going to stretch much better while you are in Africa or in Zimbabwe? So here's my thoughts on this. When it comes to retirement, from what I've seen around from my neighbors, from people that I've known from before, it is more like a sad situation to retire in the West. The reason being is family, there isn't really family there, and you're more or less isolated. So I am one of those people that believe that, when you're retired, it's time to relax, and just, kick back. So if you're going to be doing that in a country where you hardly have friends, or if you do, mentally you're stressed because, financially things are not even, adding up. Right now it's not even retirement yet the bills have gone high, the cost of living has gone high, and just basically life has become more difficult in England, and I'm sure a lot of you can agree with me on that. So where it becomes a bit challenging is to try and predict how things are going to be in 20 years, because so far they haven't improved. Actually, they have gone, worse. But on the other hand, does that mean it's all rosy when it comes to Zimbabwe? Absolutely not. When you're in Zimbabwe, there is a lot of uncertainty that you have to be dealing with. The currency can just change on you anytime. And when it comes to just getting things done, I've done a couple of videos regarding that. There is a lack of professionalism. And if you want to go professional, then things become very, very expensive. So now let's tackle the cost of living in Zimbabwe. Well, over there are advantages. And the advantages are, unlike the UK, where if you want to go and buy groceries, you have three options, generally speaking. You have Tesco, Asda, and Morrison's. And these places are expensive. They don't discriminate. They are very expensive to buy your groceries from. Now, when you compare that with Zimbabwe, you can actually buy your vegetables on the street. Very, very cheap. For $1, you can get your greens, you can have even onions, tomatoes, on the street. Now, if you're someone who's really conservative with your money, you can even go extreme and grow your own vegetables, right? And this will significantly lower the outgoings, because these vegetables are bought pretty much every single day. So if you grow them yourselves, it's going to be a massive, massive advantage. So even if there is uncertainty when it comes to finances or the currency, you can still live. Okay, you can still live. So now let's move on to the healthcare. Now, I know a lot of people, especially I speak to in Zimbabwe, they have this thing where they have this idea that healthcare is just pretty much free. Well, that is not true. It's free for people on low income. But when it comes to people that have, high paying jobs or good paying jobs, healthcare is not free. So let's just make that very, very clear. So in that case now, if you have a very good job in England, you have to pay. When you're in Zimbabwe now, I'm talking about the person retiring. I'm not talking about the guy on the street. So when it comes to Zimbabwe now, you have to treat it the same. If you are paying for healthcare in the UK, then of course expect to pay healthcare in Zimbabwe. But here's the thing now. In Zimbabwe, they have healthcare systems which you need to subscribe to on a monthly basis. It's just healthcare insurance. All right. So that you have to be prepared. Now, are they hospitals which are very good? Absolutely. But they are very expensive. So if you're going to decide to retire in Zimbabwe, then that's something that you may want to do. But if you're someone who's on a low income and you get free healthcare, then you may be leaning towards retiring in the UK. But having said that, it also comes with its own challenges. When you really get old, chances are you're going to end up in a care home, which to me personally is not an option. No, no, no. I'd rather age gracefully around people that love me, around people that I can speak to, and I think emotionally and my mood will be much better if I was in that environment compared to a care home. So that is where my thing is. I'm just trying to weigh things here, okay? So then we come to the point where, okay, if you want to really retire in Zimbabwe, then what about accommodation? Do you have to buy a house or do you have to rent? Well, renting is very expensive. I can tell you that right now, especially if you want to live in Harare. In fact, some of the rentals are as high as England. Okay, that's how crazy it is. So in order for you to rent, you need to have quite a lot of money coming in. Now, you may be asking, why would anyone want to rent during retirement? Well, there are some people who may decide to say, okay, you know what? I want to rent because I don't want to commit myself to Zimbabwe. I want to be able to travel back and forth. Well, that's a good idea, but what will be the safest option is if you're someone who's not flashy and you're someone who's down to earth, you can have a rural home and make it beautiful and comfortable. That is achievable. In fact, I've seen a lot of videos where people are really building their rural home to make it really nice, comfortable. We're talking about things like solar is there, a borehole is there, and now with the introduction of Starlink, you can have internet deep in the rural areas. In fact, it even performs better there because there isn't congestion. So you can really have a laid-back lifestyle. That is if you're someone who is not too flashy, the type of person who's like, yeah, see me, look at me, here's how I'm doing. If you're someone who's laid back, chilled, you're not all over the place, crazy, then that will be the option if you don't mind. So now let's talk about sources of income. If you're in England and you're retired, you're going to be really relying on your pension. So as I alluded to earlier on, if we're talking about your pension, in 20 years' time, if you're getting, let's say, 2,000 a month, is that really going to be enough for you to have a decent lifestyle during retirement? Because right now, we know the bills are very high and the cost of living is high. And usually the pension doesn't increase because of the situation. Normally it just stays as it is. And even if you're getting 2,000 a month, that's quite a lot for your pension. But anyway, let's use that as a bar. So if you're earning, let's say, or you're getting 2,000 a month in retirement, assuming that you have your house on mortgage and probably by then it's paid off. If you really look at that, it's still a tight budget because first of all, you're forced to work until you are in your, the pension age. Is it 67? Something like that. You're forced to work until then. But you can go and take a radical move and say, you know what? I'm not too bothered about the pension. I am going to put all my eggs in one basket and really put my money in Africa, back home. And that is where now your source of income becomes a small business. It doesn't have to be anything big. A small business, which can be maybe a small farming project, and also it could be an Airbnb. We're talking about money that is going to sustain you in retirement here. Okay, I'm not talking about your get rich type of money. No, money that was going to sustain you in retirement. So that's another way of really looking at it. Now, there's also harsh truths about choosing to go to Africa, and I'll also go through the options of how you can tackle these. There's going to be power cuts. Okay, there's going to be uncertainty. There's going to be things which you are going to say, well, you know what, in England things work much better. And that's 100% true. There are certain things that I like in Zimbabwe, and there are certain things that I really hate with a passion in Zimbabwe. So you have to now find the balance. So when it comes to these truths, you have to try by all means to counter them as much as you can. So in the case of, let's say, power cuts, which are definitely going to happen, you need to now counter that by having a solar system which is solid, and that will just take care of things. Like in my case, after installing the solar system, I have no idea when the last power cut happens because there is always electricity. And the advantage of African countries and also Zimbabwe is it's mostly sunny. So the solar is going to be working pretty much at full capacity every single time. So you're going to be able to power your TVs, your gadgets and everything. When it comes to cooking, then you can just use, your gas, and it's perfectly fine. And in that regard, you're okay. So that's the trade-off. If you are really concerned about power cuts, then you have to pay the price of the rise in energy costs, because that is huge. The rise in energy costs is crazy. Your electrical bill is not going to be the same in 20 years' time. Your gas bill is not going to be the same. So again, this is where you have to weigh and find out which one is better for you. Right. So let's talk about the peace. Are you going to get peace if you are going to retire in the UK? Well, that's for you to judge, because it depends what peace means to you. If you're someone that is frustrated about how things politically are going on in Zimbabwe, and you get emotionally involved, and then it really stresses you out, then you may want to relax without stress in England, because the politics is always going to happen in Africa. And sometimes, you can't avoid it. As for me personally, I don't really care about the politics, because I don't spend too much time on things that I can't change, because that will stress me even more. I focus on things that I can actually change, and things that I can really a contribution to. When it comes to things I can't change, I don't let that, bother me. I just focus on myself, my family, and pretty much that's it. So overall, I think I've highlighted both sides. Which one is better? Retiring in the UK, retiring in Zimbabwe, or retiring in any country in Africa. But in my opinion, I think retiring in Zimbabwe is definitely much better. It outweighs retiring in the United Kingdom. Even when it comes to purchasing a house, yes, there are opportunities of getting a mortgage when you're in England, which may not be the case in Zimbabwe. So things might be more expensive if you want to buy a house in Zimbabwe, because there you have to pay cash, okay, for the most part. So you may have some time to pay off your house on a mortgage, but are you going to be comfortable enough to live in that house? And once you finish paying for it, when it comes to repairs, you need to be on point. And this brings me on to the next part. Let's say you do get a side job in retirement. The taxes will sort you out, because there is no hiding from that. You're going to be taxed, and that is significantly going to take quite a bit of money from your earnings. When you take a look at Zimbabwe, yes, the tax system is there, but it is not really enforced that much, especially if you are starting off. It's not really something that is enforced because of the nature of the country. People are just trying to survive. So that way you can have your little side job and not worry too much about tax. And even if it's there, it's not as exorbitant as it is in the United Kingdom. So these are the sort of things you have to be thinking about. So I know I've covered quite a lot. So what do you think? Are you better off retiring in the UK, or are you better off retiring in Zimbabwe, or in Africa, in any country in Africa? I'm talking about back home, if you're someone that moved to the United Kingdom. Yeah, let me know in the comments box below. It'll be very interesting to hear your points as to which one is better and which one you prefer. Anyway, like always, head over to ruwaorganic.com. There is an online community there. Join me there, where we can discuss ideas on how we can move forward, make our life better for the future, and share tips and all that good stuff with like-minded people. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for supporting the channel. Please do like, subscribe, and share it to anyone that may find this interesting as well. Take care, and see you soon.